Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Chung, and my dear friend Emmanuel Shariki has invited me to host an episode of this amazing new EMA Talks episode focused on the Global Change Award. Now, for those of you who don't know, EMA Talks is a conversation program at the intersection of arts and sciences where entertainers and creators like myself chat with experts in all sorts of topics dedicated to saving Mother Earth. The EMA Talks program is brought to you by the Environmental Media Association. It's a 3-decade-old organization focused on educating the public on a variety of climate issues and innovations through media and entertainers. Now, back to this amazing episode that I'm hosting. EMA Talks Global Change Award focusing on innovations in fashion and sustainability. And someone who is in the fashion world, recently I've become so socially conscious of like where our clothes come from, the carbon footprint that it leads to. And like I've altered, quite frankly, how I shop personally. And so I know this is a big concern for a lot of us out there. Today, we are joined by Global Change Award winner Amit Gautam, CEO, founder, and genius of the company TextileGenesis. So without further ado, hello, Amit. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jamie, and thanks for those kind words. So really appreciate that. Yeah, and really appreciate you uh, having to have the discussion. Yeah.
Yes. Now, I mean, I was looking at your past ventures, and you have quite the impressive, I guess one would say, resume, but you are a boss and you're an innovator and you're a trailblazer. Can you just briefly speak about some of the businesses that you've launched, and more specifically on all of your focus and energy you've put towards sustainability?
No, absolutely. So, Jamie, I actually spent about, I would say, close to 15 years in Europe, in Amsterdam, working in sustainability across multiple sectors in food industry, agriculture, pharmaceutical, working with McKinsey, with World Economic Forum in Geneva, and also with Booz Allen Hamilton. And what happened during those 15 years is I was very deeply engaged in a broad range of issues around, travel and tourism, how one can actually reduce the impact, looking at solar farms, looking at wind energy. So cutting across multiple areas. And that really built in, I would say, a very deep passion for sustainability and around, what we can do to actually, reduce the impact that we are having on the environment, right? And that more or less led to the birth of TextileGenesis. Yeah.
Now, the name TextileGenesis, I'm assuming, is because textiles have an origin. They have a story. Like, where did we get them? Were they produced in a eco-friendly way? Can you explain what your company does exactly, and also blockchain and how that relates to sustainable fibers? Because in layman's term, please, because I have to do quite a bit to understand blockchain and the database and everything else.
Right. So I think the name, the TextileGenesis, as you rightly point out, right, it's just the birth and the origin of where the material comes from, right? And so what we were trying to solve was a big challenge in the fashion and textile industry, where you have a lot of claims being made around sustainable products. People say this is organic cotton, this is recycled polyester from fishing nets or from PET bottles, wherever. But there is there's lack of robust mechanism, lack of robust technology, lack of robust process to be able to verify those claims that are made towards consumers. And you and me as an average consumer, of course, trust a brand that when they're making a certain claim, that those claims are authentic, right? Mm-hmm. So at the very basic level, that's what we are doing. We're trying to ensure that if a particular retailer or brand is making a claim towards consumer, they have a system and technology in place to verify that claim around sustainable materials they're using. Again, be it organic cotton, recycled polyester, responsible wool, responsible cashmere, whatever. Now, the technology that we use is, let's say, I would say we are inspired by blockchain, right? Mm-hmm. So you asked, what is blockchain? Because this is a word that's thrown around quite a bit.
Yeah,
And
especially recently.
exactly, with recently, with all that's happening in cryptocurrency and Bitcoins, right?
Hmm.
So the first thing I want to put very clearly, we have nothing to do with cryptocurrencies or that part of the world, right? Which is where blockchain started actually. But what we see is that biggest impact in the business side it could have is around supply chain authentication, supply chain verification. And why do I say that? Because blockchain at the most basic level, Jamie, is nothing but a database to store data, right? All of us, are storing files, are storing photos, are storing things, sometimes, our expenses in a spreadsheet, a very simple database. Now, what's special about blockchain as a database is once you write something on it, then you cannot overwrite it. So what I mean is that, let's say you and both agree that we are going to meet next year in LA, yeah,
Hmm.
for a dinner. And tomorrow you say, no, I never made that promise. But if we write using blockchain as a database, we both have our digital signatures and we cannot go back on the commitment that we have made. It's impossible to write. That's how the database is designed. It's encrypted and it's almost impossible to actually edit and modify. You can write additional entry, but you cannot overwrite what you have already written, right? Unless and until we both agree. So that's the beauty, yeah. And the second very simple fact about blockchain as a database is that it connect transactions with each other, right? So it's like your banking transaction. You receive something, you send something, and you have a complete ledger. So it's a natural database that connect things to each other. And therefore, in a supply chain where a lot of things are exchanging hands,
Hmm.
fabric with a dyeing house with a garment maker. So it's a very natural database to model those kind of complex scenarios. Yeah. And the third, sorry, Jamie, yeah.
No, no,
You want to say?
I'm listening.
And the
Yes.
third, the third interesting thing about blockchain is that you can create a physical product and create a digital twin of the physical product. This whole idea from Bitcoins, we got inspired and we invented our own coin, what we call a fiber coin, which essentially means for every kilogram, for every kg of a certified material that's shipped from the beginning, like cotton, organic cotton, recycled polyester, we create a digital twin called fiber coin for every kg of product. So it gets a unique identifier so that you cannot actually duplicate it across the supply
Replicate
chain.
it. So it's like the DNA of like materials. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a digital fingerprint. It's a
Okay,
digital
digital
finger.
fingerprint.
Yeah, exactly. It's a digital twin of the physical product. And you're absolutely right. It's a very interesting point you mentioned because there's a lot of work happening on the DNA of the product where you
Hmm.
can take a sample and verify, and we can connect the audits. Once you verify that product through the DNA, the in our system we can connect the outcome of those audit results as well. Yeah.
So as a consumer, if I wanted to vet a company, like let's say I know Everlay does, for example, does great things with recycled wool or sustainable cashmere. How would I vet if they were a part of this program and if they had the database data with TextileGenesis? How would I be able to vet that it is actually where they say the fabrics come from?
Yes, yes, no, great point. So I think there are two, I would say, a couple of different ways as a consumer one can vet it. One is, we have built an app by which you can scan the barcode of the garment, and you have the entire history of the product all the way
So you know
back.
exactly where
Yes,
it's sourced, where it comes from, who handled
correct,
it.
correct.
Wow. So I
And
mean, in terms of like transparency, that's huge. Like knowing where the company was made, where the garment was made. And so it's not even just like a sustainable source, a material, vetting that, but in a way it's kind of vetting also like, it's coming from this factory. Like how are they treating their
uh,
factory workers? you
exactly,
know
exactly.
okay, cool,
Exactly. So we
interesting.
can, and it's not just the garment of a factory. I mean, you can go all the way to 5 or 6 years, right? Sometimes before a T-shirt is made, 10 10 times it's exchanging hands, just a normal t-shirt. So we can go back all the way, even to the farm where the cotton was coming from, or the farm where the wool was grown. And then you have the cleaning process, then you have the, making a thread out of it, making a fabric out of it, dyeing of that. You have this beautiful colors on your jacket where the dyeing happened, and all the way to the finished product, the garment, and then ultimately to the brand. So the entire history, we are able to track on the system. Yeah.
Wow. Now, do you think that a lot of these companies, and I'll just say fast fashion, do you think a lot of fast fashion companies are intimidated by this technology? Or do you think that they're going to come on board?
Right,
This
right.
is just like an opinion,
Yeah, and
right?
why do you say, Jamie, intimidated? Because of the fact that it will reveal too much?
Quite possibly. If they're saying, I think people will understand, like, a lot of people say that they want to support sustainable brands. And if a
Right.
company is saying that it's sustainable, but it's really not,
Yeah, that's a great point.
I do feel like a lot of people are way more socially aware in terms of where they spend their dollars for their garments.
I think that's an excellent point. So, and I think what I like to do is make a differentiation between traceability and transparency. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that, the first thing that a lot of brands, be it fast fashion brands, but also luxury brands, even they
Mm-hmm.
sometimes do not have the full traceability across the supply chain. So what the brands are first trying to do is first themselves figure out what is happening in my supply chain, because it has been a black box, to be honest, right? They know the tier one supplier, who are they buying the finished product. What happening behind tier one is largely a black box, right? And you have a very long supply chain, 5 to 6 years, perhaps one of the most. It looks like a very simple product, right? A jacket or a pant, but it's like 6 to 7 years behind it. So the first, I think most of the brands are trying to do is to understand what's happening in that part of the supply chain, which has been completely and largely invisible to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we call this 95% traceability gap, Jamie, and this is very interesting. What we mean by that, the top 100 fashion brands globally, they collectively drive up to $1 trillion apparel sales. And they have the
Wow,
top
that's a big
100 fashion
number.
brands, and they have
Yeah.
set a very, very aggressive target of 100% sustainable and traceable products in their collections by 2025, which is great, which is very visionary. They say, okay,
Wow.
100% of my products should be sustainable and traceable next 5 years, which is fantastic.
Can you share which 100 companies, well, not here this very moment, but is there a list that I can look up? Because
Yeah,
I'd like to support
absolutely.
these 100. Okay, great. Where can we find this list of 100 companies
So
or
we did the
brands?
research. I mean, I could share that with you, but also if you
Okay.
look at, for example, I think the Fashion Revolution, they also
Fashion
compile a
Revolution.
list of, they also have this transparency index, and they're also looking at, majority of the top 100 fashion brands. If you look at the Fashion Revolution. Now,
That's
what was
great.
interesting, yeah, this is very fascinating. But what was interesting is the second question, if you ask, great vision, great ambition, what percentage of the same top 100 brands can track their collections back to the fiber origin? Because they have set a target, right?
Mm-hmm. I would say
Less
right
than
now.
five. Yeah, right now. What do you think will be the percentage?
Oh God. I mean, out of 100 companies, I would say maybe 2 companies, 3 companies.
You are actually not that off, Jamie.
Okay.
So well done. It's less than 5%.
Oh my
Less
gosh.
than 5% of the top 100 fashion brands can track the garment collections back to fiber origin, right? And that's what we call 95% traceability gap, because 95% of the industry have very limited to no visibility across the entire supply chain, right? And that's what we are trying to solve at Textile Genesis, to create visibility, to create traceability in the supply chain, right? And once yeah.
No, sorry. No,
No,
I'm taking deep breaths because this
yeah,
is a lot of
and
information. No, please continue.
yeah, and once they have that traceability, then the question comes, okay, how do you offer that visibility to consumer, which is what I call transparency. But the first step that most of brands have to take is understand the whole value chain very clearly, in a verifiable manner, in a scalable manner, and in a secured manner. And once you have done that, then the question comes, okay, how do I now communicate that to my consumer, either through a phone scanning app or through an online shopping experience? And those are two quite independent pieces, because a lot of brands, if they have only 5% traceability or 10%, they cannot go to a consumer, because consumers will ask, what about the rest 90% of the product? Are they unsustainable? Are they opaque? And why are they opaque? So that's the challenge, the fashion industry struggles with right now.
So you obviously saw a major gap in information and communication and tracing. What inspired you? What gave you this idea?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I was working with this Austrian company out of close to Salzburg, The Sound of Music, where the movie was made, famous one.
Beautiful. Yes.
Beautiful area, fantastic. So I was working out of Austria in that region. Uh, and this is one of the leading innovative companies in the world around sustainable materials for the fashion and textile industry. So while working with Lensing, I was meeting a lot of brands, a lot of supply chain partners in China, in India, in Bangladesh, Vietnam, everywhere, and brands in Europe and US. So one consistent feedback, what I was hearing from them is, what was Lensing at that time, my previous company, what was we doing to secure their business model? Because they were paying a premium for our products, and they wanted to be sure that they actually receive what they pay for. And they wanted to be sure, if they're making a claim that, look, this is my tencel beautiful jacket or ladies dress, which is used very widely in ladies dresses, that those claims are authentic. Yeah. So that more or less led to the genesis of TextileGenesis, because I could see the market was actively looking for a solution there. Yeah. And I just had a eureka moment. I still, actually, to be honest, I don't know when this idea occurred. Probably, when I got up, that, okay, can we use some of this inspiration from blockchain around the tokenization, right? Around the whole fiber coins, instead of using the value as a currency, we digitize the volume, so that we know exactly how much volume is moving through the supply chain. Yeah.
Okay, here's a tech question for you, because I'm not well versed in this area. Now, blockchain is owning data storage, and correct? So
That's right.
is that kind of something that your company does as well? Like you developed the technology that is required to trace it, and to have consumers or have these companies trace their materials as well. But do you own all? Do you store all that data yourself, or your company does?
Yes, no,
Do you know what I
that's
mean? Okay, sorry.
yeah. No, yes, we do, Jamie, we
Okay.
do. So we build that system and platform where
Okay.
suppliers can create their account, right? So if you have your own company, let's say you have a beautiful dyeing house company, right? Then you could, or a printing company, you can come to our system, to our platform. It's on the cloud. So you just
Uh-huh.
need web browser and internet access to log in into the system to create your company account. Once you have your
Gotcha.
company account, then when you buy the product, those transactions can be recorded. And when you ship your product, those transactions are recorded. And yes, then we store the data, because there's a lot of competitively sensitive data and
I'm sure.
confidential. So you have to put a lot of access controls around it. So, but we do both, having the data and then having the technology itself that allows players to interact and to capture their shipments. And also that last mile of, okay, if you want to tell the story to a consumer, how one can actually tell that story.
Wonderful. Now, it's pretty obvious that you're so passionate about sustainability. Did you grow up in a sustainable minded home?
Yeah, that's a good one. So actually, I grew up on a very, very large, I would say, farm until I was in my late teens. Yeah. So essentially, my father he just passed away last year. Uh, So he was a scientist, agricultural scientist, agronomist. So he spent his entire life doing research on plants, on how to improve productivity of in different soil conditions for different crops. So essentially, I grew up in an environment. There were like about 10 or 15 scientists in a huge area, way outside any city, because
Wow.
they had, hundreds and hundreds of acres of land available from the government to do this research. So we're living in a pretty natural environment as far as you can imagine from any city, from any habitation. There's just 20 families living, and scientists and their supporters doing some research, right? So that's how I grew up until I was 15 or 16. And then I said, for my education, I went to Bombay, which is going from this place suddenly
To like
to
one of
one
the
of the
biggest cities in the world. Yeah.
correct, yeah.
Wow. What do you
So,
love
but
more, the city or nature?
that's right. No, I love nature, and I think probably that upbringing, naturally brought me quite close to the environment, and I love being in nature.
Mhm.
At every opportunity, I'm just running to the mountains or to the forest. Yeah.
Wow. Now, how has your life changed since winning the GCA?
Yeah, I think the GCA was, I would say, a really fantastic win, and on a couple of reasons, Jemmy. First of all, we are the only traceability platform to have won a Global Change Award since it was started in 2015, right?
Mhm.
And they famously call it the Nobel Prize in Fashion because they give you the prize in the same Stockholm Hall by Queen of Sweden, in the same place where they actually give the Nobel Prize. Uh,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. They put a lot of energy and focus behind it. It's one of the most recognized innovation award in the fashion industry. So I think that was first to just get that recognition and confidence that what we're doing is something unique, it's distinctive, and it can create broad impact. Then second, the financial grant itself that comes with it, right? You have about €1 million that's shared among 5 top winners. That
Mhm.
also gave us a good boost to actually invest in our technology development. And third is just the marketing, the outreach, right? I mean, just the fact that I'm here, speaking with you, is because of GCA, right?
Mhm.
So I think the marketing outreach that it delivers is also uh, fantastic. So I think those are the areas. And to be honest, we started in 2019 beginning, right?
Mhm.
TextileGenesis, and 2020 beginning is the pandemic when it hit the pandemic, right? The all hell broke loose, so to
Yeah,
speak.
talk about the break of every, supply chain.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes. All the supply chains were disrupted. Everything was
Yeah.
a complete mess middle of, same time last year. And you can imagine that's probably perhaps the worst time to start a new business because
Of
businesses
course.
were shutting down, not starting,
Mhm.
right? But fortunately for us, I mean, we had a fantastic year in terms of, at least from the market perspective. We continue to see a lot of traction, a lot of brands. Uh, Perhaps I would say with COVID-19, the focus on traceability has increased even more.
Mhm.
The focus on sustainability has increased even more. So, in a way, instead of a headwind, we got a tailwind because of what we see, because consumers are certainly more uh, attentive to what's
Oh,
happening around
absolutely.
them, right? As you
Yeah.
right, as you were saying in the beginning, we are more attentive to the choices that we make, what we buy, how we buy, you know, around everything around, right? Because suddenly,
Mhm.
in a matter of months, the whole world changed. And people said, look, can this also happen with climate change? Just in a matter of months, certain cities are being, submerged or whatever. So I think that was, I would say, a big discontinuity in collective consciousness, a big discontinuity in individual consciousness that kind of, you know, shaken us, I would say, right?
Yeah.
To reevaluate our choices.
And
So
also big companies for taking responsibility in sustainability, right? I think fashion
yes,
plays a giant role in sustainability, being one of the three biggest reasons, big big three. Is it called big three? No, but one of the largest reasons that, we have the carbon footprint that they do. It's it's a big factor in global warming,
That's right.
correct?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, yeah. No, so absolutely, absolutely. I think the companies have become significantly more environmental conscious. And as I was saying, if you look at the the commitments they have made, I think this is where I really appreciate how fast the industry has moved, making those 100% sustainable fibers commitment. And I also see, even if you look in the fashion revolution, they have a transparency index. H&M is at the top. So I think they are also doing fantastic work, I see, in terms of driving transparency and traceability. So this is the positive side I see. Brands are increasingly becoming more conscious, want to actually make a difference, and also want to make investments where they actually, can really demonstrate real progress. Yeah.
What advancements in sustainability in general do you get excited about?
A couple of fundamental new things I see happening in the advancement around sustainability especially in the fashion, right? But also broadly.
Hmm.
First is the introduction of completely new innovative materials using biotechnology or
I heard
using
about that. Yeah, that was another winner,
enzymes.
right?
Correct. So the entire amount of work that's happening on how you can create new materials using enzymes, using biotechnology, using waste. I mean, that entire space I think, is very, very exciting, because that opens entirely new set of options, and moving away from, purely synthetic, using petrochemical value chain. You can use other parts of agricultural value chain, food value chain, that previously was not accessible to for as a raw material input, right?
Hmm.
uh, I think the second big thing that I see, which is again very exciting, is this entire concept of circular economy, right? Where you can take the waste at the end of the chain as a consumer waste, and put it back into the supply chain, the circular
Yeah, so
economy.
you mean like, let's say if I wanted to turn in a pair of jeans back to Madewell, because they're doing like a denim recycle program. They have like a little box, or even Nordstrom's. If like when you're done with the cartridges for makeup, whether it's a lipstick, or you can recycle it, and there's a company that will take that waste and then they'll reproduce it into packaging again for makeup companies.
That's
Is that what you
exactly
mean? Okay, great.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So how can we take the at the end of the life of the product,
Hmm.
which used to end up in a landfill, and therefore, stay in the environment for God knows several 100,000 years. Now we can bring that end of life product back into a productive, asset into the economy, right? As an input material, and then you can transform it. And what it does, it reduces the entire environmental burden, uh, in terms of consuming new virgin resources. What I know that is H&M has launched this very interesting a concept, a machine they have built with Hong Kong Research Institute Technology, HKRITA, which can take in just a T-shirt which you are planning to dispose of, and they shred it and convert back into the fibers and knit it back all in the same machine in one spot. So you put really, they call it reloop. I'm forgetting the name. You put really the T-shirt from one end, it's shredded, the threads are there, you bring it back into a yarn, and then you knit it back into a T-shirt. Can you imagine that, right?
All in one machine.
All in one machine, all in one
Wow.
machine. So I think that what is happening in the post-consumer waste, how can we take and bring it back into the productive economy, so that we reduce the burden on new virgin materials? And that movement of circular economy is happening in fashion, it's happening in agricultural side, it's happening in the food, in electronics, in automotive. Everywhere I see this big shift in terms of how can we reuse and recycle or upgrade. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
And
think your technology will be able to trace back shredded fabrics from the cloth and then turn into new thread and a new garment? Like, will your technology be able to to trace all of the garments through that life cycle?
I think that's a great point, Jamie. That yes, we can do that, but very importantly, yes, we can actually look back into the identity of the product when it goes to a consumer, and then there are a couple of other technologies that are tracking the usage at a consumer level, and once it comes back to a production site, then we know exactly the composition because we are tracking the composition. Yeah, is it 50% cotton, 50% polyester? Is it cotton nylon? What is it, right? And
Wow.
this is so important. Any recycling technology works well only if it knows what it is recycling.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
challenge is many times people might say this is 100% cotton or 100% rayon, and they're
But it's
always,
not.
it's not. Yeah, something
Mm-hmm.
else is in. And then as a recycling technology, if something else is blended in and you do not know what it is, it can screw up your entire production process because you need to know what you're recycling, and you have to set your parameters in terms of your chemical reaction or in terms of your, especially if you do chemical recycling. So what we do is we provide that backbone of authenticity at the material level, product level, that we are sure that this is actually the composition, and therefore the ability of a recycler to use that product and be sure about composition and can adopt the parameters significantly improve the chances of to do that at scale. So yes, so they integrate quite well what happens on the circular
Wow.
economy versus what we are trying to do. Yes, yeah,
That's excellent.
right.
I,
So I
I
think
didn't mean to interrupt you. I think you had one more point to make.
yeah, so I think those, so the first one was on the entire new materials part. The second is the circular economy. And the third, I think we touched earlier, is that the whole sustainability becoming central to the consciousness, collective level and individual level, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very subtle shift, right? Sometimes you might even see, okay, it's very abstract, idea and thought. But I tell you, that is going to make a huge difference. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because the kids who are in college now, right, who are studying now, if this is so central to their awareness, to their consciousness, they're naturally gravitated towards innovations, towards ideas that actually helps to conserve the environment or make a difference in terms of how we actually use products or create products, right? We won't be doing random innovations left and right just for the sake of consumption. And I see a lot of green shoots there. Even we get so many, I mean, we are just a startup, 2.5 years
Mm-hmm.
old, but you wouldn't believe we get applications from, uh, from youngsters in Belgium and in France and in Netherlands who want to work, come either to our Hong Kong or to India office and work with us here full time, because they say, look, we believe in the purpose, we believe in the way you are actually creating, or helping to create quite a fundamental shift
Mm-hmm.
in the industry. So I think that motivates me a lot. That look, we we're getting this idea which was always on the fringes in the mainstream, and this new generation that's going to come, hopefully, this will be so central to their thought that you'll have even more innovations coming up
Mm-hmm.
around
Inspiring more.
environmental and sustainability, yeah, around
Yeah.
smart living and climate friendly living. Yeah.
That gives me so much hope.
Yes, me as
You
well.
give me so much hope.
No. One of the biggest change, Jamie, I see now, especially in the last 2 years, that it's no longer on the fringes, right? There are no
Mm-hmm.
so-called green hippies kind of smoking something and thinking that, the world will become green. I mean, it has become mainstream, right? It has become mainstream. If I just look at, the fact that you're willing to play an activist role, right, and actually
Mm-hmm.
join here and spread awareness, right? I mean, that kind of uh, activism across the civil society, right? Be it from celebrities, be it from an average citizen, be it from companies, from regulators. So I think it has become quite mainstream, which until now was something on the fringes,
Mm-hmm.
where people recognize that, look, it's our collective responsibility, this is one earth we have, and either we as a species die here or evolve, right?
Yeah.
There's no third way here, right?
No, we
uh,
choose the latter.
yeah. So I'm still not a believer of living on the Mars. So I still believe in Earth, and we need to find
Yeah.
a way to actually coexist and further evolve. So I think this is just part of our, I would say, evolution, that we're recognizing that, look, besides our individual choices, we as a collective society are making certain choices that affect how the life evolves, and that becoming mainstream as a discussion, as a debate, in various platforms, from business, civil society to the government, I think is the thing that excites me the most, because that then it's the center of discussion.
Mhm. What can consumers do to support sustainable fashion and companies like Textile Genesis? And when can we start tracing our garments?
Yeah. So I think we have already started, Jamie, in terms of, so we are doing some very large scaling trials and pilots, uh, where we are planning to track millions of units of product across 15 different countries, and
Wow.
different raw materials. So with H&M, we're running very, very large trials, hundreds of suppliers, hundreds of ongoing purchase orders, cutting across wood-based fibers, recycled polyester, looking at cotton, recycled cotton, all kinds of traceability, and even looking at not just the fabric, but also the different components that go into the garment, right? Like threads and buttons and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the coming back to you as an individual consumer, I think the first thing is to just become conscious of the choices that we make, right? I think, to me, that is the most fundamental, and it's each individual choice that kind of builds up uh, the entire collective action, right? So I think that is perhaps the most important, that what we can drive is becoming very extremely conscious of in the choices, because many times we are programmed, right, either because of advertisement or social media and god knows what. So we think we are making a choice, but if you really look deeply, you can even go back where that choice was planted in us, because we heard someone saying something nice about it, and we trust that person or whatsoever, right? So I think challenging us in the choices we make is perhaps the most important thing. And in terms of consumers having the option to actually see the traceability, we are hoping it very soon. So yeah, so maybe in the
That's
second
very
half
exciting.
of this year
Second
for
half of
some
the
of.
year of this year?
So yeah, hopefully, yeah, because there's something we are
Okay.
cooking now. So I can't invite you into the kitchen as of now, but but hopefully in the second half of this year we would have for some collections, which would be in the retail market, where one can actually see the full traceability. Yeah, so that would be really, really fantastic. Yeah.
That is so exciting. Will there be like a tag if I went to H&M and I would see that this is, traceable by Textile Genesis?
Yeah, so I think that exact shape and form, Jamie, we're still not
Okay.
sure at this point,
Okay.
because it could be through the online. There's also the big
Mm-hmm.
debate whether you offer traceability through the scanning, because through an app or something, or
Mm-hmm.
you integrate into the online shopping, right? And there are
I
pros and
see.
cons, because if you do it through the scanning part, not many people are anyhow visiting stores, first of all,
That's
right? And
true.
second, you can't tell the consumer you can scan this and you cannot scan something else, because
I see.
we are curious species, we would want
Mm-hmm.
to scan everything, but maybe only part of it is traceable. Whereas in online shopping, you can integrate very nicely. When you are browsing the product, then you can bring that traceability layer, and one can even see that once you see that traceability about the product, does it convert into a purchasing decision? Does it influence you to buy the product or not, right? Those kind of very interesting analytics and understanding of human behavior that you can do on online shopping is more difficult through the whole scanning part, right?
I see.
So we still don't know the shape or form it will take, but definitely we want to bring that to the market. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it's going to make huge impacts. And I do know that a lot of my peers and people that I know, we're all very conscious of, our carbon footprint and the purchases we make. And I thank you so much for your commitment to sustainability and everything that your company does. But is there anything else that you'd like to add before we end our interview?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is on the carbon part that you mentioned, right? The carbon
Yes.
footprint. So this is a very
Inaccurate.
interesting.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Was it an inaccurate statement on my
No, no,
end?
no. It
Okay.
was perfectly accurate. It was accurate. It was I would say spot on.
Okay.
But the challenge has been, Jamie, with the whole carbon footprint is that a lot of brands use what are called life cycle assessment analysis. They use average of an average of an average to understand the carbon impact of a product, right? Like for
Mm-hmm.
example, again, this beautiful colored jacket that you're wearing, right? If I want to assess the carbon impact of that jacket, people would say, okay, what's the average impact of a jacket, which they would have seen from some life cycle assessment studies, and then do some, rounding left and right to assess the impact. What we are saying is that unless and until you understand the supply chain behind a product, which
Mm-hmm.
country the production is happening, assessing the carbon impact on a product, you can be off by plus minus 50%, if not more.
50%? Wow.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. You can be off by a significant margin if you do not know the countries involved or the sites involved in the production across the entire supply chain. And
But
the
we don't
reason
know
is,
that as a consumer. We
yes,
only look at my label and it says made in Italy,
correct,
but we don't know if it's finished in Italy, if it was, do you know what I
correct.
mean? Like we don't, yeah, that
Absolutely.
information isn't available to us.
Absolutely. And before to you as a consumer, that information needs to be first available to a brand that they can make the right choice, right? So as we were discussing the black box, even the brands are not aware, okay, where the
Mm-hmm.
spinning was happening, where the fiber was produced, where the ginning was happening, where was the gauge fabric, where was this dyed and finished fabric done, right? So what we are saying is if you do not know that, the numbers can be way off. Now I give you a very simple example. Let's say denim production of a pair of
Mm-hmm.
jeans, right? If you make a pair of jeans in Brazil, which has a decent denim industry, versus if you make a pair of jeans in Indonesia, the factor can be twice difference in terms of carbon impact, right? Let's say if in Brazil it's 20 kgs of CO2 equivalents, in Indonesia it would be double of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the main reasons would be that the carbon emissions, the factor is dependent on the electricity grid, the electricity they're using to produce the product. In Brazil, you have a significant part of hydropower, so therefore it's clean energy. They have used huge amount of hydropower. In Indonesia, a lot of power is generated with coal and with sometimes even oil, right? So the electricity that's being used, of course, is extremely polluting to the environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is just very simple example that we used to say, highlight that the unless and you know the underlying country of production, you can be way off in your carbon impact. And right now, everyone just uses an average. And the
I
second
see.
is you might still have a company in Indonesia who has a solar farm on his rooftop, right? And they have
Mm-hmm.
invested. Now, if you do not know where your product is being produced, you cannot incentivize that factory because you don't even know they're involved in your supply chain, right? So once you start understanding your supply chain, you can say, oh, this supplier, although it's in Indonesia, which is actually might be higher on this emission factor, but has a solar farm. So I better incentivize the factory. And therefore, because it's helping to lower the impact of my product in
Mm-hmm.
my supply chain, right? Now, those kind of conversations are impossible to have if you do not have product traceability, right? So it opens an entirely new world once we start tracking the product in terms of how we can incentivize the supply chain, how we can understand the carbon impact across the supply chain, and how we can reduce the impact in the supply chain. Yeah.
Wow. So you just proved to me again how important your technology is.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
that's so helpful. Thank you.
No, sure,
Wow.
sure.
That is a lot to digest. Oh, Man,
I hope I made
very
it
helpful.
simple
No,
and
you
didn't make
did. You did. No, you did. Now it's just like I'm super aware, and I'm sure that information is to be very helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. My
It's a
goodness. I know
pleasure.
you were a busy, busy man, so I'm going to let you get back to it. And I know you're just starting your day. Are you in India or Hong Kong currently?
Right now in India, yes,
Okay, great.
in
Well, I
Bangalore.
can't
Yeah.
thank you enough so much for taking the time to speak with me
No,
and for
thank you,
breaking things
Jamie.
down.
Thank you
Yeah.
for taking time out, and thank you for this fantastic conversation on a morning. Yeah. So
Yes.
really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amit.
Thank you. Thanks.